And so, as Legends of Runeterra got a brand new expansion with a lot of different cards to cover, the schedule of our channel will be all over the place, as we try to pump out as many videos about the cards as possible in the shortest amount of time. But to not make things easier for us, Riot also did something pretty cool. With the Ruination storyline being over, a lot of the different characters involved in this story evolved. And this is especially true for Gwen, who at the beginning of the story had no idea who she even was, but then at the end she got all the answers. So to make Gwen's character fit with the current storyline, in-game they gave her some new voice lines and removed some of the outdated ones. And what's interesting is that every one of these changed lines has a reason why it was changed. So there is a lot to explain from the story's perspective. But super quickly before we start, I wanna mention that what you're about to hear is really cool, and I'm really happy about what Riot did here. But just know that they didn't just change Gwen's voice lines to fit the story simply because people liked Gwen. And they purposefully don't update quotes of someone like Shaco because people don't care about him. What happened here is that as the voice actor who was voicing Gwen was in the studio, they just gave her some extra voice lines which she would record and then later they could change them. In order to update someone like Gragas, they would need to get the budget to get in an entire new voice actor instead. So just know that updating the voice lines of the old champions is far more difficult than just swapping out some of the voice lines of the new champions. So don't freak out and don't spin this into Riot being the bad guys. Honestly, what Riot did here is really cool. And so, without further ado, let's explain why the new voice lines were added in and why some of the old ones had to be removed. As always, all of this was prepared for us by Skin Spotlights. Hail Skin Spotlights!
Vex, you can be happy for the right reasons. I'll prove it.
At the beginning, we have a confirmation that Gwen will also have some voice lines against Vex. Once again, Riot knew that Vex would be part of the storyline for quite a while, so when the voice actor for Gwen was in the studio, they just gave her the voice lines interacting with Vex as well. Either way, that is an example of a new voice line, but then we have an example of a removed one.
You've suffered. I'm sorry, but I won't let you make more victims.
This is interesting. You'll see that Riot removed a lot of the voice lines interacting with the Shadow Isles champions. And every time Gwen is talking about how she banished the champions back to the Shadow Isles. And that could be because the Black Mist should technically not be active anymore. Viego is banished on Kamavor, the Black Mist is not spewing out of him anymore, and so Gwen wouldn't be returning the Wraith back to the Mist. And for example, in the case of this voice line specifically, it was removed because the Wraiths would not make more victims. Should the Shadow Isles champion kill someone, they wouldn't make their soul join the Black Mist, because once again, the Black Mist is not there anymore. It sounds confusing now, but you'll see what I mean as we go through the other quotes.
Back to the shadows you go.
This is another example. She's not actively fighting back the Black Mist anymore.
Akshan, you've made the Sentinels proud. Don't let them down.
Of course, by the time Gwen was released, Akshan has not even been teased. But since Riot knew that he would be part of the storyline as well, they used him in Gwen's voice lines ahead of time.
A Shuriman! What's the desert like? Do tell me after I win.
The reason why this voice line was removed because Gwen, being part of the Sentinel crew, traveled around Runeterra, and she has seen all the different regions. However, it is interesting to note that when it comes to Shurima specifically, Gwen was never shown there. In the comic, she wasn't present because Lucian went there alone, and in the visual novel, it was Lucian and Rookie who traveled to Shurima, while everyone else stayed at the headquarters. So theoretically, it is possible that Gwen has not seen Shurima yet, because when she traveled from the east to the west, she traveled across Valoran, not across Shurima. But since this voice line was removed, I guess at some point Gwen had seen Shurima.
Irelia, you saved the land. It's an honor to cross blades.
Now, are we talking about Irelia saving Ionia during the Noxian invasion? Or her saving Ionia during the Ruination? Because during the Ruination, Irelia has not done it alone. In fact, Gwen was there with her. But if she's talking about the original war in Ionia, yeah sure, Irelia pushed back Swain.
Lucian, quite the journey we had. Are you still a good shot?
Of course, this line was added in because Gwen and Lucian became friends.
Lucian, you face the Black Mist. Show me everything.
And this voice line was removed because originally she wanted Lucian to teach her, which I guess he already had.
Olaf, my friend. Still looking for a glorious death?
A new neat reference to the entire point of Olaf's story, which was put in instead of this one.
Madman who wants to die. What is your story?
And it was removed because she already knows what Olaf is about.
Riven, a little thread and that blade will be as good as new.
This one is honestly a little bit strange, because in the Sentinel story, Gwen has offered Riven to repair her blade, and there Riven snapped back and she refused. So by now, Gwen should already know that repairing her blade would be a bad idea.
Riven, not a chance you'll win with a broken blade.
And of course, the removed voice line makes sense, because at the beginning she didn't really know what Riven was capable of with a broken blade.
Senna, you have missed too. But it's not all good, not all bad. How strange.
Of course, this removed voice line doesn't really need an explanation. Before, Gwen didn't know why she felt a connection with Senna. Now she knows that both of them have a part of Isolde inside them.
Thresh, no matter your form, I faced you once, I'll do it again.
Now this is kinda funny. Because yes, in the visual novel all the Sentinels fought Thresh at the end. But for example, in the comic, Thresh just turned into his unbound version, but he never fought anyone. So when Gwen says that she faced Thresh before, I really wonder what encounter she's talking about.
Sentinel, maybe the world would look better without those dark glasses.
This one is cool, because in case you don't know, at the end of the Sentinel story, while everyone traveled back to their regions, Vayne decided to go back into her normal form, but she would also stay as a Sentinel defending Demacia. So in the present days, Vayne should still be a light Sentinel of Demacia.
Vayne, you seem quite angry. I wonder who hurt you.
And of course this one was removed because at the very beginning she didn't really know who Vayne was.
Viego, you never deserved love, especially not hers.
This new voice line with Viego absolutely makes sense. At the end of the storyline, when Isolde appeared, we learned what was the deal with the two, and how kind Isolde really was.
Viego, she hasn't forgotten you, and I haven't forgiven you.
However, I don't think this voice line had to be removed. Yes, the context has changed, but I still think it would have been fine.
Please take care of the maiden, or I won't go easy on you.
This one is kinda interesting, because Gwen almost feels like she is mad at Yorick, even though she was always friendly towards him. And I wonder if that is because the maiden was confirmed to be part of Isolde as well, and so she's just worried about Isolde not being taken care of.
Yorick, you look scary, but you don't feel scary. Not to me.
You know, this is the old voice line where she was friendly towards him. And then we have two sets of voice lines which are really cool. It is basically right changing two voice lines to fit Gwen's present character. This is the old version of the first one.
Scissors, needles, thread. These were my maker's tools. I won't take her gift for granted.
And this is what it was turned into.
Scissors, needles, thread. Tools of Isolde. She'll always be with me, and I with her.
I like how in the old version she sounded nervous and cautious, but in the new version she's calm. The same one goes for the other voice line. This is the old version.
My maker. Wherever she is, I do hope she's happy.
And this is the calm version.
Isolde, wherever you are, I know you'll be alright.
And then there is yet another really cool voice line. You know, there is this.
I know your tricks, Akshan. Do better.
It is just referencing Akshan appearing in the story. But the reason why it is cool is because it was added in instead of this voice line.
There must be better Shuriman fighters out there.
In hindsight, this is really awesome, because the entire time she was talking about Akshan being in Shurima. But back when Gwen was added into the game, we didn't know to what degree Akshan would be important for the story. So we didn't know that here Gwen would be specifically talking about the new champion. This is honestly a really cool detail.
Good try, Lucian. I'll tell Senna you got me good.
Then there are more friendly quotes against the other champions from the story.
You're most welcome, Olaf. I promised you'd die with glory.
There is also one where she did give Olaf his glorious death, which once again is cool because it was put in instead of this one.
Quite strange. You seem to enjoy that.
She wondered why he enjoyed that, but later she learned he was just looking for a glorious death. And then going back to Riven, it also makes sense why this one was removed.
Why must you use a broken blade?
In the story, she learned why.
Senna, you seemed awfully distracted.
And the reason why this one was removed is because at the beginning of the story, Senna didn't know why she felt a connection with Gwen. That's why she was distracted. Senna was just confused the entire time.
I suppose you didn't plan for that. How unlike you, Thresh.
This voice line would have hit better if Thresh was a bigger part of the story. But of course, this was added in instead of this one.
Get up, Thresh. I need answers.
It makes sense why this was removed because at the beginning she was just looking for answers, which she got at the end of the story. Even though, to be honest, while to the readers of the comic Thresh did explain that he was the one who brought Viego back to life, he didn't really tell any of the Sentinels. None of the Sentinels should know why the ruination happened or how it even happened.
Vayne, you're a Sentinel. I'd expect more.
And once again, this is a really cool reference to the fact that Vayne stayed as a Sentinel in Demacia.
She pitied you. I never did.
This is kinda just a jab at the end of the story, where Isolde just talked about how sad her story with Viego was, but she still loved him.
Now you can't ruin anyone else.
This is another line that probably could have stayed in. It still would make sense even in the current settings. But because Riot has new limits for how long a champion's voice lines have to be, in order to add in a new voice line against Viego, they also need to remove one. So I guess it just happened to be this one. Speaking of which, because they obviously had to remove this one...
Your maiden. Who was she?
Because Gwen now knows that the maiden was Isolde, instead they added in a new line about Yorick.
Don't worry. I'll show the maiden how to smile.
And because the maiden is representing the pain of Isolde, that's why Gwen would try to make her smile. And finally, at the very end, this line...
I'm not afraid!
...was removed to add in this line.
You don't frighten me!
They are exactly the same thing, but in the new one, she sounds only slightly bit more confident. I'm not sure if Riot had to do that. But hey, all of this was still pretty cool, and I'm really happy that Riot did this. It gives Gwen the feeling that she has evolved over the story. Which, let's be honest, that story evolved a lot of us.